Welcome back, and if you've just joined us, we're reflecting on Tuesday's court proceedings when all 12 accused in the escape of rapist Thabo appeared in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court. We're still joined by my guests this afternoon, body language expert Tania Steyn, legal expert from the UJ Law Clinic, Elton Hart, and senior reporter Silindelo Masikane. And thank you for staying with us. Slee, there are many moving parts in this story, and unfortunately that includes Katlego Bereng, who ended up being a casualty in the story. Tell us about investigations into the role he played, his body played, and really just what's come out of that, where it was planted in Thabo Besta's cell.
So you'd remember when we began with the initial arrests, we were told that at least 2 people were facing a murder charge, and this was in connection with the body of Katlego Bereng being found as the body that was planted in Thabo Besta's cell. Of course, we have subsequently, since DNA tests were done, the family was located, and of course the family now is looking for answers. They want to know what happened to Katlego Bereng. From what we understand from the initial investigations by the police, and from what we've heard in court, it does seem as though Bereng is said to have collapsed at a taxi rank. He was rushed to a hospital, and that is where he was subsequently declared as deceased. And it seems soon after that, we had Dr. Nandipha allegedly with accused number 9, Zanda Moyo, claim Katlego's body. And at the time, it's alleged that Dr. Nandipha was assisting Zanda Moyo, who was claiming that Katlego was his brother. The body was then released and ended up at the Mangaung Correctional Center. And of course, we know that the body was set alight. And we know that, of course, the remains that the family received were not really in a good condition. And I think you've seen from many of the visuals that we've shown here on eNCA, from the court appearances, from the memorial service, from the funeral, just how devastating that has been for the family. And so the family is still seeking justice. We are seeing them coming to the court appearances. We had an opportunity to speak to Katlego's father outside court this week. Let's just take a listen.
I didn't want to come, but I was moved by Bloemfontein Celtic supporters when they say they are going to be here. You know, they're going to protest against those who got bail. And I thought, you know, I can't let people to support me when I'm staying at home. I have to be here for them. I have to appreciate what they are doing for us. I have to appreciate their support, because it is important for me to be here, yes, even though I didn't want to come.
Then talk to me about how investigations are going in terms of the charges you laid against the state. Have you been receiving any feedback? Are you satisfied with how this case in the main is proceeding?
You know, the criminal charges we laid, that's the other reason why I'm here today, because I have to engage with the lawyers to find out how far are they. As per the proceeding of the case, yes, I'm happy because they've arrested latest 3, and I'm still hopeful that there are still more arrests to be made.
Let's bring in Elton Hart once again. And earlier on, we spoke about the possessions of Thabo Besta worth about 30 million rand, and whether they are ill-gotten gains, if you will. Before we unpack that component, that, you know, it would be put forward as his possessions, even though he was supposed to be incarcerated the entire time, they are something that was put forward before the judge. But before we unpack that, let's just listen to what the commissioner had to say when it comes to those possessions, and then we can unpack that further.
What I'm aware of, what we are aware of as South African Police Service, is that on arrival at Lanseria Airport, police confiscated 2 cell phones and a laptop. That's what we know, and that's what we are aware of. We are aware that he paid a lawyer there with watches. So if he had cash on him, how then would he pay a lawyer for consultation with watches instead of paying his cash? We don't know about the cash. Maybe he can go and ask. I'm sure in Tanzania, I don't know. But we are only aware of 1 laptop, 2 cell phones that are currently in our stores.
it's very interesting, wouldn't you say, Elton, in that there was a case stated for 30 million rand worth of possessions, and yet the police are indicating that we only have a laptop and 2 cell phones. Maybe help us understand this a little bit better.
As I said earlier, when a person gets arrested, they do sort of half search a person, because before you take a person into custody, you have to search him to see if he has any dangerous weapons or drugs in his or on his possession before you can actually expose him to other people that's already in custody. So that is normal standard practice. Now here it's 2 mutually destructive versions. He says, they say. So it's now a matter of proving what has been in the... And obviously one needs to just go back and look at what happened in Tanzania. Maybe you can pick up something there as to when the Tanzanian officials arrested them, and say, what did they find in possession of Thabo and Nandipha in Tanzania, match it up with what the police is saying, what they found in their possession here, then you can sort of pull the thread through. But now it's 2 mutually destructive versions that they say, and now I hear even the commissioner's talking about he paid a lawyer with watches. Did he see, did he not see what type of watches it was? So it already speaks to what Thabo was saying, that there was watches. So for me, I look at it from the mere fact that you say, bring up watches, it means then there is some truth to what he's saying about watches. It's just how many, what make, those type of things. One needs to also look deeper, and he's asking how did he pay for cash. He then said he had cash, and then you say he consulted with a lawyer. So you also try and pull through, not that I'm taking Thabo's side, but I'm saying on your own version that you are putting before the public, you must watch what you are saying sometimes, Mr. Police Commissioner. Don't just run to the camera and speak. Think what you say.
Yeah, I mean, if Thabo is watching, he's probably thinking perhaps he should be my defense attorney. But Tania, to bring you in there, and the Commissioner's body language when he was asked that question around Thabo Best, I mean, it's an uncomfortable situation for everybody involved. But what is it that you picked up from that short engagement with the media?
So I didn't pick up any hesitation. Normally when we lie, our brain is so overactive, we tend to pause and think of the next line or the next word you want to say. I found he was fairly consistent in talking. You know, his speech was smooth. So I didn't really look at him too much, so I would have to analyze him a lot more to see what his normal behavior is and whether it's out of his comfort zone. You know, when we lie, we do things that we don't normally do. So I can't really tell if he was lying or not.
Yeah.
I did find his speech was smooth, which is a good indication for me. I can't tell you.
But it'll be interesting to see what develops there. Slee, there are many moving parts as we've been discussing throughout the afternoon. What is it that we are expecting to see going forward? What was concluded on Tuesday after those court proceedings?
So we had very brief court proceedings that we saw unfolding, of course, on Tuesday. But like I said, it was the first time we had all 12 accused in the dock. We do understand that at the next appearance on the 11th of October, we understand that investigations by the police are expected to have wrapped up. So meaning, come the 11th of October, we understand that we should be somewhat closer to a trial date of sorts. But with Dr. Nandipha, of course, going or using a different legal route by approaching the higher courts, that may delay the start of this trial, but also we look to see whether the police will be making any more arrests in this matter. And I think what's consistently come out in all of the appearances and what the police keep being asked is, when do we see the high-profile arrests? When do we see those in high-ranking positions also in the dock? I mean, I think it's safe to say that it really can't be that these 12 people are the only ones who were involved in this very elaborate escape from a very C-max prison. You know, this was a collaborative effort, and there's certainly more people involved, but the question is, will those arrests be made, or are they just too high up, or do we just have too, powerful too many powerful people involved for those arrests to take place.
Yeah, I want to go back to the legal nuances with Elton in a moment, but before we do, Slee, our viewers will remember that you were at the facility when Thabo Bester was visited by the police authorities there,
and it's not something.
Yeah. So it's not something that you would see ordinarily, and that speaks to the high-profile stakeholders that perhaps are involved. Just briefly remind us of that instance and why it was necessary for a prisoner to be visited.
So from what we were told from the Correctional Services Commissioner as well as the officials, was this was just another routine, kind of checkup, oversight visit. Yes, that's what they call them, oversight visit. He actually started at the Kroonstad prison, which is where Dr. Nandipha is being held earlier that day, and then ended up at the Hosimampuru prison later on. And the main question was around the fact that he was doing these visits, from what we understood, because there were already reports that Bester and Dr. Nandipha were receiving special treatment behind bars. And so what he was trying to, I think, assure the public was that, look, I've gone to both prisons, I've seen how they're being held, and he said that he's satisfied to say that Dr. Nandipha is being held at the hospital wing of the Kroonstad prison, but not because she's getting special treatment, but because of the high-profile nature of this case, as well as the intricacies around keeping her safe, but also away from the general public of the prison, also trying to keep her from perhaps hurting herself or getting, contraband such as cell phones into the prison that, isn't allowed. So I think they're just trying to keep extra security around both of them. And of course, we know that Bester himself, he's being held in a single cell in, of course, the most secure part of that prison. And I think one of the questions I posed to the commissioner was, how sure are you he won't be able to escape from Hosimampuru?
Yeah.
He's done it once before. And he seems to think that officials at Hosimampuru are unbribable. They, will be able to ensure that Bester remains in prison.
Yeah. Elton, to bring you in on the point that Slee makes there around the high-profile nature of this case and the treatment that people are seeing that the different stakeholders involved are getting, are you concerned about the strength of the state's case here? The magistrate did indicate this when those bail applications were being heard, that, the strength of the state's case is a little bit concerning. Based on what you've seen and you've heard being presented in front of the judge, what are your thoughts on that?
No, one looks at it, and this is an ongoing investigation, and we will only get to the gist of things when everybody is there. And for me, there is, as Lee mentioned, still some high-profile people that needs to be arrested before this matter can go to trial. Because my understanding of how a prison works is that the prison head knows every time a prison is opened outside the normal hours. So one should assume that prison head of MCC there should have known if Thabo Bester was walking out. Now those people needs to be brought back or to come and answer or as a witness. Now the strength of the state's case is, if I'm Thabo Bester, his lawyer, I can take the state on various technicalities, various ones. And I don't want to now make suggestions on air here that the avenues that he can pursue, but there's various avenues that he can pursue to actually just tackle the state on technical aspects pertaining to how they were brought here, what the charges is that is put against them. And you'll break down each accused, what he's accused of, and maybe some it's like overlapping charges. So there's a lot of technical things that you can zoom into and say, but it's impossible for him to have done 1, 2, 3. It's impossible, and there's a lot of things, but I don't want to now give it, and then people start exploring it, and maybe it get to the ears of wrong people, and they might break down. I would just stay out of it, but I have my views on what is the issues that you can tackle. The state. Strength of the state's case, one would look at a little bit further to see as the investigation progresses. Because if you get more people on, and especially the high-profile people, then the state's case will immediately start sort of getting stronger. But if they still have the low-hanging fruit, if one can put it that way, people will just say, I don't know, you have to prove, and then the state will have all the hurdles and obstacles to climb to actually prove the guilt of each of those 12 people currently before it.
Yeah, and
they won't testify against each other.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because as you give your answer, I'm wondering, Elton, if you will, when the trial will actually ever get underway. We've got Dr. Nandipha Magudumane's different processes happening, and then we've got the evidence that is still being gathered. Is it something we'll see perhaps in the next year or two, maybe, just based on your experience in the legal space and the processes that happen and when they actually get underway?
If I would roughly take an estimate or a guesstimate, I would say best, I don't even think maybe in 2024 we will actually get this thing done.
Okay.
I don't think so. Maybe 2025 we might get, because there's still a lot of things, and you have 12 accused people there. The problem in that is that 3 months down the line they change their lawyers because they don't have funds, they have to go to legal aid, they have to apply. All those sorts of things can kick in. And as we've seen with Senzoma US trial, they change the lawyers, and that derails the whole process, because then you need to initiate everything from the pre-trials, docket copies needs to be given, consultations, and already being kept so far apart. Thabo needs to be traveled to a specific venue for trial. Can they sit for a week, or can they only sit for 2 days? So all those logistics will also have a negative effect on how speedily this trial will actually get done. And I'm not blaming the NPA for this. Court rolls are also packed, so they need to find spaces where they can actually, and I think this case will not be finalized in the Magistrates Court. They will at some stage have to transfer it to the High Court to actually hear this matter.
Yeah. Tania, you and I actually spoke about this a little bit earlier, in that it's difficult to believe that someone could find themselves in a cult position, you know, where you could be brainwashed or manipulated to such an extent that you perform these criminal activities. I mean, Nandipha is a mother, she is a wife, or was, and yet she still finds herself in this precarious position. Based on your experience, how is it that one person, it would seem, has completely manipulated every single person around him to perform one or other nefarious act to land him not only getting freedom, but to perform the different crimes that he did subsequently?
So he's, you know, through history we've had these, I want to say men, there's probably women as well, that are master manipulators. And he's probably very good at reading people. And they tend to go for the more vulnerable. I don't know who reached out first, because from what I gather, Nandi wasn't involved with him, and then she reconnected with him. I don't understand that. Something must have happened there. I'm not sure if she's the one who reached out or he did. You know, but somehow he had a power over her, and she threw it all away. She threw her life away.
Yeah.
I mean, she's a beautiful woman. She had everything going for her. And to go with a man who is accused of rape and murder of women, I mean, it doesn't even make sense. And yet, throughout history, you have women who marry people like this in jail. It's almost like it becomes an addiction, I think. You know, where they are so, it's exciting. Their lives might seem boring. Even though it seems great, their lives to them might be boring. They need a little bit of zhuzh in there and going with
he
a
provides
criminal.
that, yeah.
Yeah, and he knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, and I mean, just based on the engagement he had with all the other applicants in the dock, is he a ringleader? Would you say so?
I think so. I think he's a ringleader. He did pull strings. I do think accused number one, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. He definitely has a connection to Dr. Nandi as well, because he couldn't stop looking at her at all. He was constantly leaning towards her, looking what they're doing with their hands. You know, if you look at what the hands are doing, he was constantly looking at their hands. So I think there's a connection there, maybe not from her side, but definitely from his side. You know, so there's a whole bunch of dynamics going on there.
Yeah,
you know,
very
so
interesting.
it's very interesting to watch. It's going to be interesting to watch the court case.
Yeah, and I mean, if anything is to go by what Elton says, we're going to be watching this for a couple more years, right? Thank you very much for joining us in a studio. That is senior reporter Silindelo Masikane, Tania Steyn there, who just finished her thought there. And of course, we've got the legal expert from the UJ Law Clinic, Elton Hart, joining us in studio this afternoon. Very, very interesting insights there. And as you've heard, it does continue. Don't go anywhere. After the break, we bring you the frank conversation, and we'll be back at 5:30 with all the day's news, as well as our favorite feature on a Sunday, Entrepreneurship, My Journey.